Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for today's presentation. My name is Jen Hanft, and I'm part of the State Library of North Carolina's Government and Heritage Library. The State Library is happy to host today's program, which is part 2 of the News You Can Use series, Navigating Online Historical North Carolina Newspaper Collections. Please visit the State Library of North Carolina's website to learn more about the Government and Heritage Library's collections and services. You can find that link and others that we'll talk about throughout the presentation in the chat box. After the presentation, we'll send you a follow-up email with a list of resources mentioned in today's program, as well as a link to the presentation recording on the State Library's YouTube channel. Captioning is available for this presentation. To view closed captioning in the Zoom platform, click on the Live Transcript button on your Zoom control toolbar. You can select either Show Subtitle for live captions or View Full Transcript for a full running transcript of the presentation. To make any changes to your caption settings or text size of captions, select the Subtitle Settings option and make changes as you need them. You can also interact with us during the program via chat. Click on the chat button on the Zoom toolbar to bring up the chat box and message us in chat if you need technical help or if you have questions for the presenters about any of the content we cover today. We'll have time to address questions at the end of the session, but please feel free to add your questions in chat at any time and we'll keep track of them to answer at the end. You can also unmute to ask questions at the end of the session, but until then, we do ask that everyone please keep their microphones muted. Now that all the logistics are out of the way, we can go ahead and move forward with our introductions. We're delighted to be joined today by Lisa Gregory, the program coordinator for the North Carolina Digital Heritage Center, who will be speaking during the second half of today's session. The Digital Heritage Center partners with over 300 cultural heritage institutions throughout North Carolina to digitize and share their special collections online. Gregory helps set priorities and direction so that the center remains responsive to partner and user needs while meeting the evolving demands of digital initiatives. Her favorite materials to scan are early print newspaper issues that were never microfilmed, and her least favorite are photos from the 1980s and 1990s. I completely understand that, Lisa. I will be kicking off today's presentation. As I mentioned earlier, I'm Jen Hanft, Head of Content and Information Delivery here at the State Library of North Carolina. I oversee the SLNC Government and Heritage Library's public services and digital initiatives, as well as education, outreach, and community engagement. I have a background in academic libraries and information literacy, so I love leading sessions like today's where I get to help users learn about the exciting resources the State Library offers. One final bit of housekeeping I'd like to mention is the handout for today's session, which includes resources, links, and other helpful information. If you didn't receive the handout with your Zoom registration confirmation, we'll share a link to download it in chat now, and we'll also be sending it out after the session along with the recording of today's presentation. Now, before we jump into an introduction to the historic North Carolina digital newspaper collection, I want to take a moment to review some history from our Part 1 presentation that took place a couple of weeks ago, just to give some context to the collections I'm about to discuss. As our presenters mentioned in Part 1, the North Carolina Colony's first broadside, the one-page monthly North Carolina Gazette, which you can see on screen here, was first published in 1751. The North Carolina Gazette underwent a series of slight name changes through about 1798, resulting in 4 or so other incarnations. Wilmington's North Carolina Gazette was established in 1764, and toward the turn of the century, Raleigh's newspaper history then began. From about 1797 to 1799, 3 Raleigh papers began publication: the Raleigh Register and North Carolina Weekly Advertiser, the Weekly News, and the Raleigh Minerva. I mentioned this history to give us a bit of context. When we're talking about historic North Carolina digital newspapers, we really do mean historic. Our earliest newspaper in its various incarnations is held in this collection, as is Wilmington's 1764 North Carolina Gazette, as well as a range of other post-Revolution early newspapers. In terms of Raleigh papers, this newspaper collection includes the Weekly Raleigh Register from 1799 to 1886, the Raleigh Minerva from 1799 to 1821, and another early Raleigh paper, the North Carolina Star from 1808 to 1856. So let's dig deeper into the resource known as the Historic North Carolina Digital Newspaper Collection from NC Live. This database is powered by newspapers.com, which some of you may be familiar with already. And it's affiliated with ancestry.com. So if you're an Ancestry member and doing research for your family tree, you can easily integrate the articles that you find in the digital newspaper collection into your ancestry.com research and your Ancestry family tree. But the database has value well beyond the genealogy and family history realms. It's a great resource for historical and academic research, for crime investigation, and social or business history. In the nearly 3 million pages of digitized content in our collection from more than 1,000 North Carolina newspapers, you'll find obituaries, marriage announcements, birth announcements, social pages, national and local news articles, sports, advertisements, entertainment, fashion and lifestyle pages, comics, and a lot more. While the majority of the newspapers in this digitized collection are pre-1924, there are some that have long runs into the latter half of the 20th century. For example, the Daily Tar Heel from Chapel Hill from 1893 to 1992, the Daily Times News out of Burlington from 1931 to 1977, the Gastonia Gazette from 1880 to 1977, the Robisonian from 1872 to 1990, and the Rocky Mount Telegram from 1916 to 1963. So how can you access this collection? Well, there are a few ways. You can access it on site here at the State Library of North Carolina in downtown Raleigh. You can also access it online with your SLNC Government and Heritage Library card through the online resources page on the State Library website. And you can also access it directly through the NC Live website. And all of those links are going into chat, so you should be able to access them both now if you'd like to, or they'll all be included in the handout for today's session, so you'll have them for future reference. Now, NC Live is a statewide library cooperative in North Carolina that supports more than 200 public and academic libraries across the state by providing shared access to a wide range of digital resources. NC Live content is available on site at our library and online with an SLNC Government and Heritage Library card or with a card from another NC Live member library. And through the link in chat, you can find out if your local public or academic library that you're a member of has access to NC Live resources. As you get ready to start your search in the historic North Carolina newspaper collection, I want to share a few tips to maximize your search power and to minimize your frustration. Just like with any other newspaper research, before looking at newspapers.com, take some time to focus your search. Keyword searching in a resource like a newspaper database can be tricky in that it can find a large pool of unrelated results that you need to sift through in order to find the true gems, or your search could come up empty for a number of reasons, like maybe you're using a search term that wasn't in use during the time period that paper was published, or the topic that you're researching might have been written about using different terminology than you're using in your search. Come up with options and alternatives, both for topical searches as well as names that you might be searching, including using nicknames or middle names for people that you're searching for. And search all of the options and alternatives you come up with to make sure you're covering all the bases. Overall, the more information you know about the topic you're researching, the better. Try to do as much background research on your topic as you can before you jump into your research. Have names, dates, locations, and other information ready if you can find them. Try to find out what newspapers were in print at that time in that location and expand your search from there. Remember that not all North Carolina newspapers are in the historic North Carolina digital newspaper collection. And of the papers that are, not all issues are included. Many newspapers, especially early ones, didn't survive or had poor copies survive. And many papers in the collection only have a few years included. Bear in mind, too, that historically, especially in the backcountry or rural areas, news was often published in the city paper. So also look for any larger newspapers around the location related to your research. And if you already know of a particular article that you're looking for, compile all the information that you can about it, like the article name, the newspaper name, the publication date, any keywords that might be in the article, and an author if you're aware of one. This will be extremely helpful as you begin searching newspapers and will also help us to help you if you can't find the article that you're looking for. So when you start your search in newspapers.com, make sure you're starting from the historic North Carolina collection. And you'll know that you're there because this is what you'll see at the top of the screen, that North Carolina collection, years available, 1751 to 1999. Starting from the State Library's link or NC Lives will ensure you're limiting your search pool to only North Carolina newspapers that are part of this subscription. And it'll also keep you from getting search hits that you can't then access because you don't have a subscription. Next, you want to narrow or broaden your search as needed. If you start with a search in a particular newspaper or in a particular location or with a specific date range and get too few or no hits, do a keyword search across all papers and dates. And similarly, if you start with a basic keyword or name search and get too many unrelated hits, you can then filter your results by location or date. So let's take a look at an actual search in the newspapers.com historic North Carolina newspapers database so we can see what I'm talking about here in action. Bear with me while I jump over into the North Carolina digital newspaper collection. Okay, so it's Women's History Month. And in honor of that, let's do a search for news on Carrie Broughton, who was the 4th state librarian of North Carolina and the first woman to be appointed head of a state department in North Carolina. And you can find out more about Carrie Broughton through NCpedia, the online encyclopedia all about North Carolina. And that link to that article is in chat right now. To start with, we're going to type Carrie Broughton into the keyword search field, as I've just done here. And we're going to use quotes to keep her first name and last name together as one full name. So let's run that search and see what we get. Bear with us while it's running a little bit slowly. It is working on the search. And we will try that again. Okay, here we go. So it gives us 173 matches, and that's not too bad, but we can definitely narrow that down. So let's look at our options for narrowing or filtering our search results. Right here at the top under our search fields, you've got some filter options. We can filter by results type. We've got obituaries, marriages. None of those have any options, but if they did, you would be able to filter in those ways. You can filter by a particular newspaper, and it will tell you which newspapers have how many hits in your search results, and you can search for a particular newspaper. You can also narrow your search by adding additional search criteria, like a date or a location. Let's go ahead and add in Raleigh as a location. It narrows it down to 60 results. And if we browse through our search results, we can see our last one on the page here mentions Carrie Broughton and State Librarian, which is definitely something that we want to take a look at because it just gave us our ideal result right there in the little thumbnail. So we'll click on that result and take a tour of this newspaper viewer from newspapers.com. In the newspaper viewer, you're immediately taken to a close-up of that newspaper article within the larger page of the paper. Starting on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see that we have the identifying citation information, the Union Herald out of Raleigh, North Carolina, the date of publication, 22nd of March, 1919. It happened to be a Saturday that day. The page of the newspaper that the article appeared on. And on the left-hand side of the screen, you have the option to zoom out to see the larger newspaper or zoom in to see a closer view of the article that you're looking for or anything else on the page. And in the upper right-hand corner, we have all the tools you'll need to retain your search results, to clip them, and to save them for the future. So you have the ability to clip the article, and you can resize that clip in order to save exactly the area that you want. You can print or save a portion of the page or the entire page, just the article, above the fold, or the entire thing. You can share a clipping on social media. You can download it, you can share it by email, you can embed it, or you can add it to your Ancestry.com account. And if you click on your account, once you've created a free account, you can then see any clippings that you've saved. You can see your recent views. So you can get back to any previous search results that you've explored. So that wraps up our brief introduction to the Historic North Carolina Digital Newspapers Collection. It's a really robust resource that I'm sure you're excited to dig into. There's a lot of really exciting newspapers and information that can be found in it. But if you have any questions, please put them in chat and I'll address them at the end of the session after Lisa's presentation. I'll turn it over now to Lisa to talk to us about the collections available from the North Carolina Digital Heritage Center.
Thank you, Jen. I'm really happy to be here with all of y'all today. I love talking about newspapers, and I especially love talking about newspapers available on our site. And we've got a lot of great things going on with newspapers and a lot of great additions happening. So this is a really timely webinar today, and I hope that you learn both more about the content on our site and also some of the functionality and how to get around within the collection. So here's what I'll be talking about today. I'm going to give a brief overview of who we are in case you're not familiar with the Digital Heritage Center, and then a brief overview of the website, digitalnc.org. Then I'm going to dive into how to browse and search newspapers on our site and describe for you what kind of papers you'll find on Digital NC. At the end, I want to wrap up with another couple of things just to keep in mind as you're using our website that are things that are specific or maybe not as specific to newspapers on our site that could help you get a leg up as you search. So the North Carolina Digital Heritage Center is located physically in Wilson Library at UNC Chapel Hill, but we serve institutions all across the state. Right now we have 303 partner institutions in all of North Carolina's 100 counties. Our partners range from public libraries to museums, archives, historic societies, colleges and universities, community colleges, alumni associations, and more. So we work with cultural heritage institutions who have collections that are open to the public. We have a wide variety of materials freely available online at our website, quite a bit beyond newspapers. So if you haven't been before, I encourage you to check it out after today and see if there's anything that could help boost your research. We are constantly adding more on an almost weekly basis. So if you don't find something you need initially, check back in every once in a while to see what's new on the site. Here's a picture of our homepage. I wanted to show you that there's a sort of basic organization to the collection, or how we've organized it into types, item types. And you can see here on the screen on the left, those are some of the top level groupings of the types of formats we have available. Each of those collections has what we call a landing page, which is one way to search and browse that specific type of content. You can also search across all of the items, but if you want to narrow your search down more easily, going into one of those landing pages can really be a big help. In addition, each county in North Carolina has its own page. So if you are pretty positive that what you're looking for is within a certain county, this might be a great way to go about it. Then you'll be able to search all of the content that is about that county, not necessarily from the county, but about it. Now, you're going to find a wide range. Some counties we have maybe 20 materials. Some counties we have 2,000. This is because we work with what our partners are coming to us with, so in demand wise. And so some counties we have worked with different partners, many different partners on a very long-term basis. Other counties we've only worked with maybe one partner briefly. But it might be helpful to check out if you're looking for a specific county, materials related to a specific county, to go in this way to help narrow your search quickly. We also have a landing page for all of our partner institutions. This can be especially helpful if you're interested in finding materials perhaps from a school, a college, or university. We've worked with almost all of the UNC system schools, for example, over half of the community colleges, many, I think all but one of the NCICU, the independent colleges and universities in the state. So that's frequently a way that folks can narrow down their search quickly. On the other hand, if you are from one of these types of organizations and want to search within what we've done for your library or association, this is a good way to go about it. You'll see here that it lists the different formats we've worked on and related newspaper titles, as well as any blog posts we have that are related to that organization. So going back to those format landing pages that I mentioned at the top of my presentation today, this is what the newspaper's landing page looks like. And from this page, you can get to newspapers through a number of different mechanisms, which I'm going to go into in a second. This is a great place to start if you know you only want to look at newspapers, so you don't get bogged down in research in results from city directories, yearbooks, or other types of collections. So the first type of mechanism for getting into a good search in the newspaper's collection is just filtering and browsing. If you scroll down on the landing page, you'll see that there's a very long list of what we call title cards that allow you to browse newspaper titles and filter and narrow down your search. So let's say you're looking for a very particular newspaper from Alamance County. That's going to be my example today, and also where I am sitting right now. You would put in your filtering word in the top search box, and then the number of title cards would decrease to just those that apply to your search. You'll see that each title card has the title as well as the town or towns in which it was published, the county or counties that are related, the year span, the inclusive year span for what we have on our site. There could be additional publication pages before or after, but this is for our site, as well as the number of issues. In addition, there's also a list of titles used. So many newspapers change titles over time, even though it was technically the same publication. This is especially true for student newspapers, some of which seem to like to change on a yearly basis. We try and include all the titles related to what's in our collection so that if you try and filter using one of those titles, it will come up regardless of what we call our standard title or the most recent title. You can also narrow down your search based on paper types. So we have community papers on our site, we have student papers, and then we also do classify African American papers as a special subset, and that's another way that you can narrow down this list easily by clicking on one of those three buttons right under the search box. So once I click on that title card for the Alamance Gleaner, this is the newspaper page for that title. Through this page, you can search the newspaper, just the Gleaner in and of itself in the search box at the top. You can quickly see the years that we have available for that particular title. And within each year, you can also see which dates are available. So I love this. It's a really great way to, once you get to that title page, to scroll down and quickly see whether we're missing specific title or specific issues, or if we have a pretty great run. So for the Gleaner in 1875, this is not a bad run. I don't see any holes within the, starting from February 9th to the end. And that's a way to really drill down to a specific issue. Let's say you have a citation that you're looking for, you've got the issue, you've got the page number. This is the way to do it, and to do it quickly. There are other ways to get there, but this is really a quick way to do it. Once you click on an issue, this is the screen that you'll get. This is our newspaper viewer. On the left-hand side, you'll see the image of the newspaper. At the top of the viewer, there are a number of different options. On the right-hand side, you'll get a lot of metadata or information about this particular title, including the standardized title, and then any usage restrictions that we may know about this particular paper. You'll also see the contributor's name. So this one is brought to you on behalf of the Alamance County Public Libraries. And then there are some ways to quickly bounce from issue to issue and then page to page. At the top of the viewer, there are a number of different options you have for manipulating or reusing the page in front of you. You can go, again, like you can on the lower right, you can go from issue to issue and page to page. You can also take a look at just the full text of this image, and I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end of this presentation. You can download a PDF. You can download a JPEG 2000 of the image, or you can clip and print just a portion of what's on the screen. This is not, I will acknowledge, as I guess you could say granular or sophisticated as what you might see on newspapers.com for clipping and printing. So in my opinion, it's probably easiest to download the full page. But if you end up doing a lot of clipping, you might get kind of good at it and roll with that instead. Now I'm going to talk about a simple search. So this is a way that you can get a broad topic quickly brought back on your search for newspapers. And the easiest way to do that is going to be back on that landing page in that top box. The idea here is that you don't necessarily know which location or which title you are interested in viewing. You just want to see, what do we have about this topic across the entire newspapers collection? So pop a word in there. And we went really broad with this one. So farming, lots of good results. It will bring back automatically as a default relevance related results. So that's based on the number of times a particular word is on the page. And so it's going to try and guess the most relevant page for you. You can see there are many, many pages here, probably way more than you would need. But this is sort of just an overview of how you can get a very large result set or small result set very quickly. One thing I wanted to show, this is an example of farming. If you want to only view the front pages, don't overlook this little tiny button at the top that says front pages only. This can be really helpful if you're trying to quickly find maybe a particular year. You can also sort these results, not by relevance, but instead by date. And that can also help if you want to narrow it down to a particular time frame. So those are options that you have here on this page. Again, not as much granularity as you might have on newspapers.com, but still pretty effective, especially if you're able to narrow down your search to something that isn't quite as broad as my example. Okay, now we're really getting into the nitty-gritty. This is the advanced search next. And it's a little bit hidden on our site, but it has a lot more power, as you would imagine, than the other two options I just showed you. It's a really great resource, especially if you're looking for a name, a full name, which I know many folks are doing related to genealogy or family history. So this is where the advanced search, one of the ways you can get to the advanced search, again, back from that landing page. And it's a little bit buried in our next redesign. It's going to be a lot more prominent, but this is the quick way to get to the advanced search. And this is what it takes you to. There's a lot on this page, so I'm going to walk through it a little bit from top to bottom. So first, you're going to tell what keywords you're interested in, and you have 4 different options. You have any and all. So if you want to put in any of the words, you could put in farming, agriculture, any synonyms, and it will bring back any pages related to any of those words. But let's say you want all of the words. So let's say I want farming, Trenton. I only want it for Trenton, North Carolina. And so that would only bring back pages where there is both farming and Trenton available on that page. There's also one of my favorites, the phrase search. And so this is going to be a great option. Let's say you have a name, Lisa Gregory. I can put Lisa Gregory in there. And that's similar to putting the quotation marks around a search like you might do, like Jen showed earlier, on other websites. This is your phrase search. And then one search, which I don't use as often, but when I need it, it's just right on, is the last of those options, with the words within a certain number of words of each other. Here's how I use this frequently. Let's say I want Lisa Gregory wherever she is located within these papers. Sometimes her middle name is in the paper, or a middle initial. Sometimes it's not. So I could put Lisa Gregory and then say within 5 words of each other, and that's going to really help bring back both types of instances. Lisa Gregory as a phrase, Lisa Ann Gregory, Lisa A. Gregory. all of those types of situations. The other way I use this last search is, let's say I'm looking for a really common name. So, let's go with Brian Smith. And I want the Brian Smith who was a superintendent of a school. I can say Brian Smith within 5, 10, 15 words of each other with the word superintendent. And that can possibly help narrow down your search to instances where Brian Smith is really forefronted, acknowledged as a superintendent in that capacity for that person. Again, you might not get all of the results that are actually in our newspaper database about the Brian Smith you're looking for, but it can help with research to have that proximity search available to you. To the right of that keyword section, you can limit by year. This is also super helpful. Again, too, if you have a really broad topic or a very common name. And so you just would put in the beginning and ending years there. Below that on the page, you can choose to narrow by certain title or titles within our database. First, I would highly recommend that you try and filter that list. So let's say you wanted to do only titles from Guilford County. You could put Guilford. You would select all of the titles you were interested in by clicking on them on the left, and then click the Add to Search button to take them to the right. And so then whatever you put up in keywords, it will only bring back papers from Guilford County where those keywords are present. Once you have everything filled out that is relevant or that you'd like to have in your search, you click Search Newspapers and you'll get a results list. So here's an example I'm going to put in, and this is similar or related to what I mentioned earlier. I'm going to talk about Earnest C. Byers today. And I'm putting him in, first off, I would start putting him in exactly like I have it written here. If I didn't get a lot of results, I would probably then move on to the option below that with the proximity search. And I only want to hear about Earnest C. Byers in Greensboro papers. So you can see on the bottom, I put in the word Greensboro, and I selected 2 newspapers. Going to be in the search, I actually went through and selected all of the Greensboro papers that we have. And here he is. Here's the results that came back, or this is the first result that came back, which was considered most relevant. And you can see that Earnest C. Byers is listed in the Notice of Trustees sale here in this Greensboro Patriot issue. Okay, so here's the example of Earnest Byers. Now I want Earnest Byers whenever those 2 words are close to each other. And I also went back to, oh, I must not have put that in. Anyway, the search results, this comes up, this paper does come up, but it comes up later down the line. It's not as high in the search results list, but it brought back, I think there were 9 results compared to the first result list, which was much fewer. And so it was an additional list of relevant examples for Earnest Byers, but not as, excuse me, not as specific as I had done the time before. Sorry, I must have forgotten to put those in. I got too carried away searching for Earnest. Okay, now I'd like to review what kind of papers you can find on our site. Geographically, they're from all across North Carolina. However, you will not find papers on our site for every single location, every single paper that was published. Temporally, we have papers on there from the earliest paper, which Jen talked about at the top of this webinar, through 2020. However, similar to the newspapers.com site, the highest concentration on our site will be dated before 1923. And that's due to copyright, the copyright expiration date. Types of papers, as I've alluded to already, we have a lot of town or community papers, college and high school student papers. We have some special interest papers, and then also papers published by businesses. And the last two, those are the least frequent, but they're also some of the most rich, I think, for really specific local information. Subset, we do have a subset of African American newspapers, and the URL given here is actually a kind of a exhibit, we call it an exhibit page, a landing page for all of the African American newspapers in our collection. And we have a wide range of African American newspapers, including the earliest known newspaper published by and for African Americans in the state. So our papers are contributed by or nominated by our partner institutions. And that is one of the sort of founding principles of the Digital Heritage Center. We don't select, our partners select materials. That does mean it's a pretty eclectic site. And so you won't see maybe the sort of consistent representation across the entire state that you might expect. Some places will have a lot more, some places not as much. And that's true for newspapers as well as the rest of our collection. The papers that are included, some were digitized from print, some were digitized from rolls of microfilm. And we do have a small amount of born digital newspapers or newspapers that were created in a digital format and never existed in print or another format. We also are in the process of a really large project to add all of the pre-1923 newspapers available from newspapers.com into our site. So through an agreement with UNC Chapel Hill a number of years ago, those newspapers were added to newspapers.com, and we now have permission to move those over 2 million pages to digital NC. And we're about, I think the person working on this is about half to 2/3 of the way through. So eventually you'll be able to access those through our site as well as you if you access them through newspapers.com. So we rarely have a full run of a newspaper. We sometimes do have every issue that's extant, especially for some of those early newspapers, again, as Jen mentioned earlier, where there are so many missing. What we have is dependent on the amount of funding we receive and the resources we have for staff on site, and how much time is in an average workday. It also is dependent on whether or not we can and have been able to get permission from the rights holders, if that's applicable, if the papers are still in copyright. We always ask our partners to try and find the rights holder, whether that's the current publisher or an heir from the previous publisher, and receive permission from them for putting the newspapers online. Many times that's successful. It is not always successful. So that can sometimes be a barrier to adding a paper. Whether or not it's available on microfilm can also be a factor. It's a lot less expensive and time consuming for us to digitize from microfilm. And so that we've done a lot more from microfilm than we have from print. And so sometimes the fact that something's on microfilm means that it's more easily and readily digitizable by us. And then finally, have we received a nomination or a request for that paper to be added to our site or not? That is also a deciding factor. You can see an example of the Winston-Salem Chronicle here, and there are a couple of different types of, you can see the black and white or grayscale, that's from microfilm, and then we filled in issues from print, and that's the full color. So how do I get a paper added? That's something we frequently get asked. If it's in print or born digital, we do that on a rolling basis. So those requests are free to ask for those at any point. However, we do have to ask for get copyright-free papers or permission from the rights holders. The catch with this is that we do have a page count cap at 500 pages per batch. And we can take maybe 1 or 2 batches per year. And this is a capacity issue. Now, many of you know that 500 pages doesn't get you a whole lot with print newspapers, but really it is just the amount of staff we have on site and our ability to try and serve as many folks around the state as we can. We do make exceptions for papers documenting minoritized communities, and those we do not have a cap. Those we will digitize as much as we possibly can. If it's on microfilm, we accept nominations during late summer every year. This is announced on our blog for microfilmed newspaper digitization. Similar to the print or born digital, it has to either be copyright free or we have to be able to secure permission from the rights holders. If a nomination is chosen, we can typically do around 5,000 to 8,000 pages of that title at that point in time. All of our services are free to our partners. And so what I'm talking about on this slide are services that you would not pay for. We may have to borrow the microfilm or the print from your location, but that's it. We also can accept funds to get work completed. And so that's another option if you do have money available to you that you would like to spend on newspaper digitization. The cost that we charge is just for digitization and the text markup, which makes a newspaper a full text searchable on our site. We cover the ongoing cost of access hosting on the web. For this, there is no page limit. It's really just however much funding you have available to you. We may have to borrow the film or the paper if it's not available at UNC Chapel Hill, but then it's really just however much you're able to pay for, we can take on. The Chowan Herald from Edenton is an example of a paper that has a really nice span, probably more than we would be able to do for free. And that's because the Shepherd Pruden Memorial Library has been able to put together funds to do a lot of digitization of this title beyond what we were able to do at no cost. Other things to keep in mind. So I had alluded earlier to the fact that there's some challenges with newspaper, whether it's from microfilm or print, when it comes to full text searching. So here are two examples of optical character recognition text that was performed for the newspapers on our site. We run all of our images through the optical character recognition software. Sometimes it's fantastic, sometimes it's terrible. That has usually to do, well, not usually, sometimes with the age of the newspaper. So on the left here, you can see one of those very early gazettes, from 1752, yeah. And that you can tell the text is not that great. It can also have to do with the quality of the microfilm. If it was filmed especially dark, if it's not very crisp, the optical character recognition software will do its best, but it won't be great. Contrast that with the issue from the Daily Tar Heel on the right, which is from the 1950s. And you can see names in there. It looks really great. Everything is very readable and legible. So if you are searching for a name or really any text, keep in mind that it will only work as well as the optical character recognition was able to perform on that initial image. And so it just always gets me when I do could be in there. Your name could be in there, but not being brought back. So that's why that filtering and browsing is a great option if you have a little bit more ability to scope the issues you're looking for. And then a couple of other points. Papers in the largest cities, Charlotte, Raleigh, may not be on our site because they monetize or they're proprietary about their archives. Think the Raleigh NNO as an example. There are paid subscription services that have already contracted with these newspapers to have their archives available. And so unfortunately, many of those very large papers, those very large cities won't be available. We do have and will have some Raleigh NNO, but it's going to be very early out of copyright issues. We don't generally take nominations for additions to our site from individuals, but if folks get in touch with us, we try and connect them up with a local cultural heritage organization who then could nominate. And that is something that frequently is really successful because the local organization is happy to help their patron, their community member, and then we can notch that up with the particular different nomination characteristics that we score every time we receive one. So don't be discouraged. If you do send us or talk to a local organization. The paper of your dreams may be coming online to you at some point. Keep up with us on our blog. We announce all new additions to our site on our blog, and you can filter it to newspapers if you're only interested in newspapers. We also announce on Facebook and Twitter. We have accounts on both of those platforms. For the newspapers.com project, every Friday, the staff member who's working hard on that project lists all of the titles that were added that week. And so that's something that we even have some folks who are checking in every week to see what else is coming up and online on our site. But otherwise, I encourage you to check out our newspaper collection to see if there's something that works for you. And again, check back because we do add new content all the time. Here's an email address that you're welcome to use. It comes right to my inbox, digitalnc@unc.edu. If you have any questions in the future, but now I'm happy to work with Jen to take any questions we might have received already today.
Thank you so much, Lisa, for giving us an introduction to the newspaper collections from the North Carolina Digital Heritage Center. Lisa and I are happy to answer any questions you might have at this point, and we encourage you to post your questions in the chat box. We did have a couple of questions that I've seen come through already. The first one is more of a request that I be sure to say how to get rid of the yellow highlighting to print an article from the newspapers.com platform. So I will go ahead and share that screen again. Okay, so we can see again the article that we found that fit the bill for our research needs on Carrie Broughton being appointed state librarian. The name that we searched for is highlighted in yellow, however, and especially for articles where your search term is sort of peppered throughout the article, you don't necessarily want to print a copy that has that yellow box all throughout the article in the text. So in order to get rid of that, to print a clean copy, you can see right here at the top of the newspaper screen, the newspaper viewer, it shows your search match. If you click cancel, it cleans that up right there, and then you can click on print or save. You can select the article size or whatever portion of the page you want to print, and it doesn't have that yellow highlighting right there in the middle. I think our second question was for Lisa. Lisa, how does one get to the various landing pages in on Digital NC, like counties or institutions?
I'm going to steal your screen share, Jen.
Perfect.
Okay, that's a great question. If you want to get to the different landing pages, you'll go to our website, and right here at the top, you can see both getting to the format related landing pages, contributors, or counties. This will also allow you to get to our collections and exhibits page. And I had alluded quickly to that African American newspapers in North Carolina. That's right here at the top. And then I did see another question. I'll go ahead and address that while I'm here about looking for variations of a last name. My suggestion would be to go back to that advanced search. So let's go to our newspapers landing page. Scroll down to that advanced search. And I would suggest using the with all of the words. So you could put Kelly, Kelly, oh, I'm sorry, not all. Take that back, strike that, any of the words. So Kelly, Kelly, any variations here. So then you'll bring back all of those different kinds. It's not perhaps as granular as you might like. So let's say your name is John Kelly. There isn't really a way to search multiple phrases as in any search. We don't have a way to do that, But if you're looking for a surname that you have multiple variations, this is going to be a way to go ahead and do that. And then you would just scroll down to the very bottom and say search newspapers.
And we had another question for you, Lisa, while you're in the site. When you receive a deteriorated paper, such as the Kings Mountain paper example that you showed, how do you manage scanning one that's so brittle?
I love that photo. That was fun. I don't do a lot of scanning these days. I have a lot of folks who do that hard work for us, but that was one that I took on because I didn't want anyone else to feel bad about all of the chaff. So we have a number of overhead scanners that allow us to place fragile papers flat, and then we don't put any glass over on top of them, and then we can very gently roll them over to get as little loss as possible. In this instance, with the Mooney Memorial Library, who had that paper, there was also an extensive, or not extensive, but there was a conversation ahead of time where we made sure they knew that there would be a lot of loss with that paper, and did they want us to proceed. And in this instance, this was the only known copy extant for this paper, and they were very keen to have it captured digitally, so that to use that as a form of ongoing access, so that they could put the paper away and not have to touch it. We have a lot of props as well, and by props I mean different types of foam, different types of board that we can use when turning fragile items and propping them up so that you get the best image possible. But there was a lot of exterior loss. Thankfully, the text block on many of the pages was still fine. But yeah, that was a fun one, and it's not frequent that we get any that are in that bad of a shape, but if it's the last known copy, we'll certainly give it a try.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone, for your questions. I saw that we did have one additional question about links to the handouts for today's session. Those for today, as well as for part 1 from 2 weeks ago, are both in chat. You can scroll through your chat and download both of those. And we'll be sending, again, the links to all the materials and recordings from this session and the previous session after today. So for any questions that we didn't get to, or that you preferred not to ask in this forum, we encourage you to reach out to us through our contact information that's been provided, and we'll be happy to help. We do have a couple of additional announcements, though, before we wrap up today. First, we hope you enjoyed today's program and found the information and the tools that we talked about to be valuable. We'd appreciate it if you take a moment to complete a short survey to tell us how we did, how we can improve, and what future programs you'd like to see. Please also save the date for part 3 of our News You Can Use series, which will take place in 2 weeks on March 24th at 11 a.m. I'll be presenting a deep dive into 2 state library newspaper collections, Newspaper Archive and Newsbank. I think Newsbank will be of particular interest to folks because, as Lisa said, larger North Carolina papers like the News and Observer and the Charlotte Observer aren't held in collections like the Digital Heritage Center or the North Carolina Digital Collections. And it's sometimes hard to find current and archival collections of those without paying for a subscription yourself. Newsbank, however, includes current newspapers from across North Carolina, as well as the historical News and Observer archives from 1910 to the present, and Charlotte Observer archives from 1886 to the present. And so I'll be discussing all of those in 2 weeks at the 3rd installment of our News You Can Use series, and you can register at the link on screen or in chat. In addition, next week, We hope you'll join us for our Women's History Month event, Healing and Hope Through History, in celebration of Women's History in North Carolina, which will take a look at stories and lives of nurses, doctors, faith leaders, freedom fighters, and more using digital resources from the State Library of North Carolina. You can register for that as well at the link on your screen or in chat. And I want to say thanks again to Lisa Gregory from the Digital Heritage Center for a great presentation today. And thanks as well to Mike Milner from the State Library for chat support. And thank you everyone for joining us this morning. We look forward to seeing you at future GHL events. I hope you have a great day.